Welcome to the Politics People. My guest today is one of the rising stars of conservative politics in the USA. With a rapidly increasing presence on social media, using the handle Half Black Conservative, she has over 300,000 followers on TikTok alone. I'm talking to Amala Ekpunobi. Amala, thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Paul. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a joy to meet you. I just mentioned in the intro that you're a huge star on TikTok, posting videos, getting millions of likes. What are the parameters on TikTok? What kind of length of video are you limited to?
Well, you have two main options, and one is 15 seconds and the other is 60. So 60 is the farthest that you can go with your content on TikTok.
So you're posting these videos, political videos I should point out, on TikTok, but this is normally the home of like Cajun cooking recipes and dance routines.
Yeah, that's pretty on the nose, yeah.
So what led you down this path of posting pro-conservative videos on TikTok? Was there some sort of, I don't know, what they call it now, a red pill moment in your life?
Yeah, I had a red pill, definitely, at some point in my life. I wasn't a conservative until the age of 18, really. Up until then, I was a raging leftist.
So I know you talk about this in your videos that you had a conversion when you were 18. How old are you now?
I'm 20 years old now, so on the younger end of the spectrum when it comes to conservatives. But I grew up and was born and raised in a small town in Central Florida. I was raised by a single mother, and she happens to be very, very far on the left. Her job is to work as a fundraiser for a leftist organization here in Florida based out of Orlando. So I always grew up with her influence. And of course, she's very left leaning. She supports socialist policies and the like. So that was my main influence as a child. And I was a very angry leftist for most of my life. So as I went through middle school and high school, I would argue for socialist policies, and I would get into arguments and debates with anybody who was willing to talk to me. And when I graduated high school, I actually started working for her organization as a youth organizer. So I was traveling around and speaking with middle schoolers, high schoolers in my area about the organization, about what we do, and sort of recruiting them to work with us, to join our protests, to go to our education seminars, to get involved with all of our events. And through the process of working with the left, that was when I woke up and became a conservative.
That's extraordinary. So it's like from working within a left-leaning organisation that actually fueled your conversion to conservatism. Was there any incident whilst working for them, or was it a cumulative, gradual kind of realization?
It was a very slow and gradual awakening for me, but I did have very key pivotal moments that occurred in my life that really pushed me forward. One of which was while working at this organization, there was a lot of rhetoric towards white people that was just blatantly racist, blatantly hate filled. And I, like my handle says, I'm a half Black conservative. I was raised by the white side of my family. And I would come into work and hear all of this racist talk about white people. And finally, I had had enough of it, and I went to the VP of the organization, and I sat down with him, and I voiced my concern. I said, particularly, I was raised by that white side of my family. Am I meant to hate my family? And more specifically, I'm half white. Am I supposed to have some sort of issue with half of myself? And the question was not well received whatsoever. He basically sat me down, looked at me, and said, you just have to understand that people are angry. They have a right to be angry, and you are just going to sit and deal with it. And he was more concerned that I wasn't spouting the same rhetoric, and I wasn't as angry as he was towards white people in America. So that certainly pushed me in the direction of becoming conservative. And there were many moments like that that did the same.
That's stunning, isn't it? It's absolutely stunning.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and has this converted is your mother white?
Yes, my mom is white.
Has she been influenced at all now? Has she come to your side at all, or is it?
No. we sit at opposite ends of the spectrum, and we sort of come to an agreement that maybe politics is something that we don't delve into anymore with each other, because she is very, very far on the extreme left, and we have yet to find common ground on any political issue.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's
an interesting dynamic.
It is extraordinary. Like, I've got it with my wife. My wife is basically a communist. I keep saying this. She really is. There's a thing I keep parroting all the time, which is we think they are wrong. They think we are evil.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like just after the we're talking today on the righteous day of Trump's second acquittal.
Yes.
And it won't be his last, by the way. This is not the last time he's getting.
Certainly not. Certainly not. The chase never ends.
And she just begins a sentence with me going, God, why? How does he even? And then she forgets she's talking to me, and then she goes, she's just a narcissist, and and then my mum and dad wouldn't have even had their COVID vaccines if he'd won. And I was like, yeah, they would. Yeah, it's and it's just they can't get past the beginning of a sentence, because unless you accept that kind of black is white or something, unless you're prepared to say that, well, obviously, see, I'm a horrible Trump supporter. I'm just like ridiculously kind of I am. I really don't like Trump supporters even exceeding the kind of, well, maybe his personality can rub people the wrong way. Maybe his tweets were a bit and I'm just like, I've never seen the guy do anything wrong. I cannot find a single thing that he's done wrong. But anyway, so my point is, it's like when you're talking to people who are opposed to it, conservatism in the new form, whatever, you've got no chance of a discussion, it seems to me, unless you accept certain doctrinal facts, which are, he is a little bit evil, or he's out for himself, or something. And I'm not a stupid person, I don't think. I just don't see any evidence.
Yes, it is a very difficult, and it's something I'm still navigating, is how to have conversations with people who don't necessarily agree and somehow reach a common ground. And we've become particularly divisive in the last year, and it's getting increasingly more difficult to do that. So I'm with you on that one. It's very difficult. My main goal is, when I have a conversation with somebody who opposes me, is to just find common ground on one subject. And maybe we can have a launch pad that builds off of that, and we can get into something different. But it's very difficult to find that common ground these days.
I find it just fascinating. You had this whole epiphany, if I can call it that, but you didn't stop at that. You decided to share your insights and make videos. We talked about TikTok. How did that start? What was the first video? What was the first inspiration for it? What led you down that path?
So it was a longer journey for me, I would say. When I left that organization, which was in late 2018, I spent all of 2019 and the majority of 2020 sort of researching and finding out who I was as a conservative, and sort of backtracking from all the socialist beliefs that I had had before, and figuring out A, why I was wrong, and B, why conservatives are right. And once I had felt I could defend myself on all these different issues, I decided to broadcast that out to the world, because we were getting in a particularly rough spot in America with this recent election. And as that was going on, and as it was coming to a closing, so we thought, I decided to hop online and share my views, because I knew that I could give it a fresh perspective, having worked on the left and been so far left that I would now have thought I was beyond reach, but I sort of awakened, and I knew I could do that for other people. So that was the goal.
Yeah, you certainly have. Have you converted anyone, do you know?
I get a lot of comments saying, especially from young Black kids, that they had not seen a perspective like mine before. So I feel like I am reaching somebody. But every time I get a comment where somebody says, I hadn't thought about it that way before, or this is something I hadn't heard, that's a plus for me, and I push forward. So I think some change is being made, I hope.
Yeah, this was the thing. This is what I wanted to talk to you, actually. You got these videos on TikTok, and you're dealing with, huge subjects, huge social and political topical subjects. but you're dealing with them in such a concise, entertaining way. I mean, your videos are really, really funny.
Thank you.
Well, but what I can imagine that's doing, and like I said, when I looked at you last week, it was 250,000, and now you're telling me it's 300,000. So you might be growing at something like 50 to 100,000 a month.
Yes, very quickly. I started this platform, I want to say 3.5 months ago.
Is that,
And
geez,
yeah, my
really?
last check was 330,000. So it's growing exponentially.
That's great. And then what's the is TikTok enough to contain you, or do you move on to other platforms with it? Do you take that and sort of propagate other outlets?
Yes, I share that content on other outlets as well. I'm on Instagram at the same username. I'm on Twitter as a similar username, and I'm working on getting on sort of the more conservative platforms, Gab, Telegram, things like that. It's been a very whirlwind of a last 4 months. So I'm just working on how to branch things out.
So you're having this like meteoric rise to fame at the moment in political media circles. I mean, and apart from talking to me, I'm sure this is one of the highlights of that your stellar career advancement. But have you had any other kind of major offers? Have you been approached by any of the big players?
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. I just got back actually from LA visiting the Prager University office and sort of hanging out with the folks there and filming some content there. So that has been a huge change for me. While I was there, I got the insane opportunity to be on Dennis Prager's radio show. So I did that on Saturday morning. So this has opened up a whole new world for me. And I wasn't necessarily planning on dedicating my life to politics. I had always wanted to, but I didn't know where to start. And this seems like this has created a launch pad for me. So that's the plan.
Wow. I mean, that's really, you had no kind of goal in mind when you started the first videos. It's just suck it and see.
Yeah. I just wanted to share my views and see if anybody would be receptive to them. And it turns out a lot of people are very receptive to them, both on the hateful spectrum and on the support spectrum. So it's been quite a ride.
Oh, I can only imagine. Like I said, it's just so. I'm not just going to blow smoke. You must have lost friends as a result of this.
Yes,
Let's name every single one of them now. So
here's her name. Here's her Instagram.
so it's a girl. We've established that. All right. Tell me everything.
The one I had one person that really, I guess, hit me the hardest, and that was a best friend that I had from middle school. So what, the age of 13 all the way until 20 years of age. And once I had started the TikTok and it sort of gained a little bit of traction, I was completely erased from her life because of my views.
Wow.
Which I had somewhat anticipated that response from people, but she caught me on surprise. But it's the risk that we take and it's the price that we pay.
No, absolutely, and it's we just take it as a given. That, I mean, like I said, I've been sort of difficult most of my life, so people initially assume that I'm being a contrarian or something, you know. It's like pro Brexit. I'm not one of the only people in the world, I think, that was able to vote for Brexit and for Trump.
There you go.
You know, so but people think that I think there's an element where, because you're very nice and a pleasant person, I'm a very, very paid up member of the awkward squad, so people assume it's some kind of pose, but it's just, I don't get how they don't see that we're trying to save them from crashing into the rocks. You know, we're trying to we see it as like, no, you are signing up to totalitarianism. You are signing up to the government telling you, and whatever shape that government is, telling you what to do, and you having no future escape from it. We're trying to stop you living in China, basically. At best. And the price we have to pay for, I'm not saying we're virtuous or martyrs or anything, but it is just, you can't, if the friendship is the price you have to pay, the loss of the friendship is the price you have to pay to kind of carry on doing what I consider is essential good work, then so be it. You hope on the other side there might be some sort of reconciliation.
Exactly. And that's sort of what I came to terms with. And it's all part of this larger scheme. People who exile others because of their political beliefs are part of this larger plan that's being carried out through social media and Hollywood and news media. And I can't blame her for sort of being indoctrinated into hating conservatives because that seems to be the the view across the board. And it's unfortunate, but that's just where we're at.
Were you ever that hateful towards conservatives in your previous socialist life?
Yes, as a young person and throughout high school, and as I was working for that organization in the beginning stages, I absolutely hated anybody who would identify on the right. And it was all part of this indoctrination that I had that if you were on the right, you were contributing to oppression and patriarchy and all those buzzwords that they throw out there. So I definitely fell for that trap. And that's why I do what I do, because I know others are falling for it too.
It must be extraordinary to actually get that first wave. I didn't realize those videos. You'd only been doing this for a few months,
Mm-hmm.
and to me, you seem so established. But it must be heady and exciting at the same time. The idea that you are now, you have no alternative now but to be involved in politics. I mean, even, and I don't want to freak anybody out, but it's just like you have now blotted your copybook. You're going to be anathema to so many people because you've shared your views. So
Yeah.
you're kind of. So I'm not trying to be sensationalist. I'm just like this is the problem. You come out, any of us, we come out and actually declare our. Well, we're talking 2 days after that poor girl with the Mandalorian being fired because she expressed a view. You do
Yep.
currently. The die is cast. You have made your political beliefs public, and you are going to be judged by them, whichever way the wind blows in the future. So at 20 years old, the die is cast for you after a few months of just putting your beliefs on video.
Absolutely. It's something that I sort of knew going into it, but I didn't know what the full extent of it was going to be. And now that I've sort of had time to sit back and think about it, a lot of people have seen my content. It's sort of spread like wildfire when I did not expect it to. And we live in an age now where if people know you're a conservative, it's harder for you to get a job. It's harder for you to keep a job that's outside of politics. So I have sort of consigned myself to this life, but I'm okay with that actually. And I think it's necessary, particularly right now in this country.
Well, no, I think it is necessary, and I think actually it sets a good example because I was really pleased with Ben Shapiro's approach to, and I can't remember her name, Gina Caro, something like that from.
Yeah, Cardona.
Yeah, I was so pleased that immediately after her sacking, he offered her probably an equivalent financial contract because he's actually very much into the idea of marketing content to conservative audiences.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And I think we need more of that right now because it seems as though every aspect of our lives is sort of controlled by the left and you can't really run from it. And that's scary for me, particularly when I think about our younger generations, because that's just what they're going to grow up with from birth all the way until they can vote. And we need conservatives like Ben Shapiro to actually start making conservative content that is accessible to the American people and that's also entertaining and has conservative influence in it.
So what would you be doing? Again, it's 3.5 months. It's nothing. So 3.5 months. The first video was just, you might have said, and I'm sorry if I didn't pick up, was it just before the election then?
I think it was after the
Okay.
election. I want to say a few weeks after I made a video, and it was just a little silly, fun TikTok where I talked about my different views to some random song or whatever, and it ended up getting more views than I anticipated. And I figured, okay, maybe we'll make a second one, and now
And
we're here.
and now the rest is history. So what would you have been doing? What was the plan for you? It had politics not intervened.
Sure. So right now, I work in medicine, in allergy specifically, and my goal was I was going to start nursing school in August of this year and go on to be a midwife. But now I've sort of found a different calling, and now we're following this path. So we'll see where that leads us. But the goal was medicine. Absolutely.
this whole as I said, your handle is half black conservative.
Hmm.
I This is me just spitballing. I've just got a feeling that over the next 4 years, black conservatives are going to be more important than they've ever been. Just because they seem to be, and this this is probably some white guy inverted racist thing, but they just seem to be in a unique position to be able to actually express their views. There's much more of a cultural conservatism in the black community, is what I perceive. There was a time in 2008, Obama got elected, and I was living in the States then, and I was living in West Hollywood. But it was interesting that Obama won, but Prop 8, I think it was, in California carried, which was, I think, basically it banned again same-sex marriage.
Hmm.
But this was in California in 2008, and it was apparently put down to the fact that the number of black votes had increased exponentially to vote for Obama. But obviously,
Yes.
the proposition on the ballot was to vote down gay marriage. So you had this
Yep.
kind of quirk, and if that had been and then it was the way it was parlayed was like, no, actually that was Mormons or something, but it was just like, no, black people ain't going to vote for that, black communities will always vote. But anyway,
Yes.
my point is like they don't seem to draw the same level of criticism the black communities for being conservative. So I think that they're going to be um, hugely significant to the more conservative this conservative movement, which kind of restarts today with the acquittal of Trump.
Yes.
Any thoughts on my rambling, pointless question?
Oh, I have plenty of thoughts on that. I think everything you said is absolutely true. And one of the major facets of being a black conservative is that we get the right to speak about issues that white conservatives can't. So at the same time that the left is saying, oh, well, you're white and you're conservative, you can't even speak on this issue. Why should we listen to what you're saying? And we have books on how to be an anti-racist and the idea of white fragility. So white conservatives have basically been taken out of the picture. But when you put a black conservative in front of a leftist, there's really nothing that they can do, because if they try to silence you, they're silencing a black voice. So I think black conservatives are currently unique, but I don't think they will be for very long. And also, they cannot be silenced due to the left's own rhetoric. So it's an interesting torch that we carry, being on the conservative side and also being black. And they sort of dug their own hole with that one.
I know, right? I mean, this is all just me spouting, but you see Van Jones being interviewed on The View, and they just kind of they took him to pieces because he'd had a photograph taken with Candace Owens, and they were like, Van Jones, you've been an advocate for the black community or whatever. Can you now not see that you are not trusted by the black community because you have affiliated yourself in this photograph with Candace Owens? And it's just like, all he'd said was, you have to acknowledge that Trump did some good things for the black community. I mean, he certainly is no Trump fan. But as I said, they were so po-faced and on The View and so accusatorial. Can you not see how the black community no longer trusts you? It's like, I don't know. If you're advising the Democrats, if you're advising the left, what could they do now to actually sort of win back the hearts and minds of people like you who've been lost to conservatism?
Oh, there's so many changes that I would make that they would not agree with whatsoever. I think the number one thing is that we need to focus on, particularly in the black community, issues that are truly facing the black community. And right now we get to hear all this rhetoric about police and police brutality as if that is a major issue for the black community, when it's not. And we're essentially, on the left, selling victimhood to the American people. We sell it to young girls by telling them they live in a patriarchal society. We sell it to people of color by telling them we live in a racist society. And when you do that, you are guarding people from success, guarding people from being able to go out and seek opportunities. And that is the main thing that I would say to the left, is that we have to stop preaching victimhood. We live in a country that is full of freedom and endless opportunity. And when you teach victimhood, especially to young Americans, you are taking that away from them. And that's the main problem for me, and why I'm so passionate about being conservative and living in the land of opportunity, because the left seems to want to strip that away, particularly from people like me.
I just can't get over the white liberal angle approach that basically it's like an inverted racism. They just know that they are powerful, and even the criticism is their white supremacy. White people can be supreme, and only everything happens in this world only because of the magnanimity and the largesse of white people, and they are so powerful. You end up with this sort of inverted racism where it's like the white liberal is somehow an apologist for just the inherent power that white people have, but they are trying to do the right thing, because we all know that white people are powerful, but they are trying to spread that that bounty of white power more evenly in neglected communities, and they just are so confident and so full of certainty that white people, it's up to white people to change, because nothing can happen in this world without the power of the white person. It's this inverted racism. That's all I can describe it as.
Exactly. And that's what young white kids are growing up to think, is that, oh, you're inherently racist and you carry more power because you were born with your skin color, and you should feel guilty about that as well. And that is such a strange thing to me, that anybody would listen to that, take that in, comprehend it, and then accept it. And it's just absolutely ridiculous when privilege is such a thing of circumstance. How can you tell somebody that their race predetermines how successful they're going to be, or predetermines that they're more powerful than anybody else of another race? It's just inherently racist in itself, yet you're selling the opposite narrative. It's insane.
Were there any... It's really interesting to me. So when Trump came in 2016... you were very anti him still.
Yes.
But let me see. What are you, 20? But you weren't. Yeah, obviously you weren't voting then. You couldn't vote in 2016.
No, I was not voting then.
Okay.
Yes.
So, what changed? You had your epiphany. Did you suddenly? Did that coincide with seeing him differently, or did you start with your epiphany, still not like Trump, and then come round to him eventually, or did they all crystallize at the same time?
They all sort of came together congruently at the same time. When I had woken up and realized I was a conservative, then I had to go back and look at what Trump had done. And I realized, okay, well, he is really a pillar of conservative values in the policies that he puts forth, in what he's doing. And he is championing the people who are sort of trying to make this country better. And I had to sort of go back and reevaluate all the things that I had hated before, and realize that I was sold a lie. And the media has attacked Trump since day one of his even announcing that he was going to be running for president. And that was where I was tricked the most, because I turn on the TV and of course it's all this orange man bad. Trump said this, Trump did that. He's a racist, he's a misogynist. And when I went back and looked at the policies he put in place and all the projects that he was working on day and night, that blew all of that out of the water for me.
So because of your, I mean, this is not really an age thing, I guess, but are you more sort of socially liberal and fiscally conservative? Is that your kind of, like say, gay marriage, etc.? Are you sort of okay with gay marriage, but financially conservative or fiscally conservative?
I would say I'm conservative really on all fronts currently. I did not used to be, of course. I was socially liberal and fiscally liberal as well. Liberal, I'll say.
Yeah.
But now, yeah, I'm conservative across the board, pro-gun, pro-life. Really, any major issue, I fall on the right.
Yeah. Again, the gun thing. I just don't understand how people can be. I mean, it's one of the great things about the US. It's an anecdote, but there was a story about the reason that Japan decided not to try an invasion into the United States. I've looked into it. Apparently, it's not true, but I think it's a good anecdote, and it does indicate that the idea that Japan chose not to invade because the research came back that something like one out of every half of all the houses basically had guns.
Sure.
And so it was they thought it was wise not to have some kind of land invasion. Yeah, I don't understand. Well, except that every totalitarian state in history, the first thing they do when they get into power is to take the guns off the citizenry.
Yep, and they sell it to you as something out of justice or out of duty that they're taking your guns away from you, and that it's actually saving lives rather than harming them. And that is where we're at right now in America, at least on the left. They think that it's such a great thing to take away guns because we're stopping the violence. We're going to stop other crimes from happening. These mass shootings that we hear about all the time, and they sell it to you as something virtuous and something that is going to do good when really it is just taking power away from the American people.
You know, one thing I've always wanted to ask people, because you've got a similar story, not just because of the race aspect, but with Candace Owens, for instance, just the actual epiphany, just the actual kind of coming from the left, because you're not even coming from neutrality. Is that you both? Did you resist this at all?
I did, and there would be plenty of instances where something would happen, say a police shooting that got televised all across the United States, and I would look at it and I would want so badly to fall back into that old leftist rhetoric that I had where the police are racist and it's just a racist institution all around and so is America. And I would look into the facts and try to keep that mindset the entire way through. And once you do that, once you do your research and you look into these things, you just can't hold that aspect anymore. Once you accept factual information, you fall away from the left. That's just a fact for me. And that's what happened. So I did try to resist it as much as I could, because that would be admitting that everything I ever thought was a lie. But at the end of the day, you cannot resist it.
Oh, listen, I completely agree. I just really admire anyone, and certainly without being patronizing, the with the age thing, if I'd have had that sort of strength of character at your age, then I wouldn't be sort of doing podcasts. But it's I am, please eat your vegetables. It's just like I look like I'm recuperating from an illness. But no, it is. I think it's really uplifting that. And again, I like this new generation. I like this generation of young people, because I do think that when somebody like you has a realization or an epiphany or a change of view, you are actually confident enough within yourself to be comfortable with expressing that. That's one of the upsides of this new generation that's constantly being maligned.
It's a double-edged sword, because I think some people are too comfortable sharing their lives, and we get some more raw content that maybe we shouldn't have out there. But it is interesting to be raised in the age of social media and feel more comfortable sort of putting my views out there. I don't know that it would be the same if I was older and sort of had a different upbringing.
I'll tell you what. Did you then start reading? So this is 2018, the Epiphany, and it was like 2020, the videos. But on TikTok, by the way, I've got to keep pointing that out because they're just so good. But
Thank you.
They really are. They really are. But did your choice of reading matter change? I mean, did you? I don't know. Were you aware of people like Thomas Sowell before you flipped?
So I'll say pretty blatantly, when I was on the left, there was no real choice of reading. I would argue that much reading does not happen at all on the left. But when I did wake up and become a conservative, yes, there was a lot of reading that I did, particularly Thomas Sowell. And I found we had a very similar story. He grew up and was a Marxist for much of his young life. And he didn't wake up until he started working for the Labor Department. And when he started working for what he supported, he realized that he woke up, and that's exactly what happened to me. So I respect him greatly, and his intellect is far beyond anything I will ever accomplish.
He's just so. I just need him to live another couple of decades. I mean, it's amazing.
Oh, I know.
He is fun. And again, I'm not being patronizing. It's not just because he's black. He literally is the greatest thinker on earth at the moment. It's like, and before him, I was like a huge Milton Friedman fan growing up. He was the thing that really. I never even needed converting because I'm just like poor white trash. So I was always this way minded. But Milton Friedman was the governor for me growing up, because it was,
Gotcha.
well, we hadn't, I tell you what it was. I think that we were still in the 70s and 80s going through an economic discussion. We're now into the realms of the left now has entered morality. That
Yes.
they've taken over. They've taken over the part of the brain that used to be concerned with religion, and they've replaced that religion with the new religion of the climate and of, I don't even like to say woke, but certainly identity politics. And
Yeah.
and and I think that Milton Friedman wouldn't have been able to handle that. Frankly, it takes somebody like a Thomas Sowell, who, even though he's an economist, he actually is just throwing dry data at you. You know,
Absolutely.
and it's kryptonite. It's kryptonite for these people.
It is. When you look at the hard facts on any subject matter, you can't argue with them. And Thomas has a beautiful way of just stating them out to you. He does not allow feelings to get into the matter. He doesn't even allow his own personal feelings on a subject to get into what he communicates. He simply tells you what the facts are, and he leaves it at that. And he's just fantastic.
He really is, and he comes from academia, which again is kryptonite for the left, because they
Yes.
own academia, and the fact that he's got all the badges and all the credibility. I do worry for his passing, I really do, because I think that there's he is our champion, I think.
Absolutely.
And again, there are tons of great thinkers on the right, don't get me wrong, but he's a member of all their clubs, basically, and it freaks them out because he is irrefutable.
That is very true. Yeah, he is a beacon of hope that I hope never dies. And when he does pass, hopefully there's somebody to carry the torch of his work and make sure that people are still here reading it and seeing what he has to say, because there is nobody that does it better. There
No,
really is not.
there's nobody. No, I totally agree. Are you an optimist for the coming next few decades? Do you think it's going to go the right way, or do you think we're facing perhaps a darkness for a couple of decades that we all have to keep some little torch flickering?
It's something that I think about a lot, and I want to be optimistic about it because I do see plenty of people who give me lots of hope and who are building really big platforms within this country and have a lot of support. But at the same time, I'm seeing lots of censorship. I'm seeing lots of pushback. And with this current administration, another issue that I don't think a lot of people are talking about is immigration. And I think what's going to happen is there is a deeper plan to sort of open up our borders and bring in a new couple million of people who are going to be new voters. And if that is done, and if it is done successfully, we will not see another great Republican president for a very, very long time.
Agreed. I mean, it's awful to see. I'm a huge anti-globalist. That's where my sort of economic politics is, and it's awful to see that there's. See, I think a lot of the fellow travelers, perhaps people like your mother, but I've never met her, are really well-meaning, and all they see is the propaganda of, like, aren't brown people vulnerable, and you have to bring in these huddled masses, not realizing that it's actually an economic ploy by huge corporatist institutions to be able to create wage suppression and to totally disenfranchise the actual poor who are already here. So even people
Yep.
that arrived illegally last year are going to suffer because of the new people arriving illegally this year. They can never get
Yes.
any kind of leverage in the labour market. And like I said, I swear they mean well, but they just don't seem to have that argument. I've seen it made clearly by people much smarter than myself, and that's pretty much everybody. But it doesn't seem to land with them. It is orange man bad, brown people vulnerable, you know?
Yeah, it is. And it is very sad. And like you said, I think leftist ideology is born out of good intention. Not on the establishment side of things, but
Yeah.
definitely on the day to day. And it's just unfortunate that when you try to throw facts at people and you try to explain to them the feeling and the emotion and the sadness of knowing that somebody can't come into this country and enjoy all of its opportunities, just overwhelms overwhelms all facts, it overwhelms all reason and logic. And it's just a beast that's born out of empathy.
Oh, that's a lovely expression. I'd not heard that. Yes, that's exactly what it is. But it goes, again, it reflects my sort of cod theory that white people deep down know they're so powerful and that they've created this Garden of Eden that everybody should want to join it. As opposed to, I'll tell you what, stop starting wars in places and let them develop their economy. Or
Yep.
why not encourage democracy in Mexico so they actually round up gangs and people don't live in poverty and fear? And so we have two countries that are like the wealthiest in the world. It's just like, no, we don't see it like
Absolutely.
that. They're brown, and therefore all they're capable of is being our maids. I mean, it comes down to that line, isn't it? Who's going to clean your toilet, Donald Trump? That it's
Yes,
like,
I remember that.
holy moly, and it's just like we are nakedly, deliberately exploiting poor people by opening our borders, etc., and actively, I just think the whole thing is, I think it's tantamount to 21st century slavery. It's a similar, it's a similar disregard for individual liberty,
Yep.
But this time it comes back, history repeating itself as farce. It comes back as like brown people virtuous or something, as opposed to brown people beasts 400 years ago. You know?
Yes. It comes back to these just buzzwords and blanket statements that make absolutely no sense when you look at them on the macro level. And then you hear all the sad stories of the people who want to come into this country, but you do realize that suffering is something that you do have to go through in order to build a prosperous society. And you hear all the time the rhetoric of, oh, they're living in their countries on $2 a day. And how could you even imagine that? Well, guess what? Well, decades ago, that was 50 cents a day. To build
100%.
a prosperous free market economy, you have to go through that $2 a day stage. You have to build from that. You can't just escape it and run to America and leave your country there to disintegrate. And
Absolutely.
people don't understand that.
They won't. I know, it's awful. And, I think, okay, I'm going to be too dry on this. You're right. I think it was like at the end of the 19th century, most of America lived on the equivalent of $1 a day. That was the majority of the United States. But then, we blew the crap out of Japan in World War II, and they come back as an economic miracle within a couple of decades because they followed, basically American economic policy. So everywhere's capable of it. But we encourage hobbling of other places just so that we can have an oversupply of this cheap labor. I genuinely think it's practically a war crime. It's the strangest thing to me that these people keep, and then again, they tend not to come from communities that ever have to share their space with these, further poor communities coming in.
That is exactly the same thing with California when they said, okay, well, let's make it a sanctuary. Let's put sanctuary cities over there. That's what the Dems want over there. And no. We want immigration. We just don't want the immigration into our areas.
Absolutely. So
that's the juxtaposition of the two things.
I know, it's such a hypocrisy. What's next for you then? I'm going to give you your life back because you've already given me too much time. What's next? What's next for you?
What's next for me? Oh, I don't know what's next for me, honestly.
Have you not been? Have Trump's people not reached out to you yet?
I've had plenty of people reach out for me, mainly for interviews and things like that. I do have some.
No, I mean Trump's people, Trump's office.
Oh, no.
It's coming. Oh, it's coming. It's coming any day.
I would hope that it was coming, but that would be fantastic, but not yet.
Go and take your mom to visit. That'd be so cool.
That's so funny because when I was on Dennis Prager's show, he said, you know what, bring your mom on here. I would love to have her on the show and maybe talk to her. I'd be very respectful, and she would absolutely not have it. So,
really? Is that a fact?
Yes. She said, there's no way I'm doing that.
Is that through politics, or is that just shy mom stuff, just general?
I think it's a mixture of both, but she definitely is not keen on having conversations with conservatives, which...
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Has any of that just been dismissed in your household as this is just some sort of rebellion you're going through? This is a normal rejection.
I've heard all the blanket statements. This is just a rejection of everything that I've taught you. This is a phase. This is brought on by men or something like that.
Yeah.
I've heard it all, and I get it especially in my hate comments. I've internalized racism that I just don't know about, and I
Yeah.
hate the black side of myself. I get any explanation that you could imagine to sort of explain away my beliefs.
Isn't that
Anything.
it's extraordinary?
Yeah.
It's extraordinary. But like I said, I can't. Obviously, I can't speak for the black community or experience. But like I said, at the same side that you would be getting that, you do, as I said, I think uniquely come from a community that is going to, I think, save the conservative movement, or at least reinforce it.
I believe so. And that's what I'm seeing day by day as more Black conservatives come out of the woodworks and start to speak and be very passionate about the things that they say. And like I said, you can't silence a Black conservative. And that's a unique power that we have. And I think it's going to take the Conservative Party very far.
Oh, I totally agree. Are you getting international attention?
Interestingly enough, I heard that I'm very popular in, where am I? In the Netherlands. And I don't know why, but I get a lot of people from the Netherlands who are throwing support my way.
Isn't that
Yeah.
interesting?
Apparently something went viral over there.
Interesting. Oh, I wonder why that is. I mean, they were at the cutting edge of what was the name of that blonde guy who's just absolutely fantastic, and he was running for the European Parliament. I can't remember his name. Begins with a P. But
Yeah,
they were at the first vanguard of the because there was that journalist that was murdered by somebody who'd spoken out against Islam or the Islamification of the Netherlands. And he'd spoken out about it, and he was murdered. And this must have been like 15 years ago. So it was before it was like a mainstream story. It was still,
yeah.
And so maybe there is a kind of a hotbed of conservative thinking over there, but perhaps that we're catching up with.
It seems to be everywhere, and I get emails from people in different countries, a few from Australia, a few from the UK, saying we're experiencing all the things that you're talking about right now. I did a video in Target where I went and sort of pointed out that they had a bunch of anti-racist books teaching people how to denounce their race, the racist side of their thinking, and denounce their white privilege. And people in the UK and Australia were saying, we are seeing the exact same rhetoric here, and unfortunately, we think it's too late to do anything about it. So people are not very optimistic.
They're not. I don't think it's too late. That's the thing. I don't know. I know I've asked you, you're optimistic, but do you think it's too late?
I don't think it's too late.
No.
And I think a reason that I felt I needed to get online and start talking about it is that I was somebody who you would have probably looked at and said, she's beyond saving. She's not going to ever be conservative. There's no way she's going to wake up. And I did. So my own story and my own change gives me hope for other people, because if I can be reached, I think others can too.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't even think there'll be a tipping point, because I think that there's a few generations that are hugely indoctrinated, and they're using almost Stone Age tools to express themselves. They're not arguing about the minutiae of the actual politics at the moment, but I was touching on it with your age being dismissed as some sort of teenage rebellion. I do think this new generation coming through, just because of some teenage rebellion, is bound to reject what we call woke, but identity politics. It's bound to. I can't see it becoming reinforced over the next 20 years. It's got to be sniggered at,
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point you made, and probably a perspective that I haven't really thought of that deeply. But if you look back to when America was very traditional and typically conservative in general, you saw teens rebel against that, and then we got this super liberal leftist generation. And now leftism is becoming the norm. So at some point, there has to be some sort of rebellion against that, I would imagine. If that is the mainstream, the only way to go against it would be to fall for conservative values and to follow that path.
I just don't see this generation, they're going to, in 10 years, the use of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency is really, really common. I cannot see this new wired generation being amenable to handing over any of their income just because the government's got guns. I just don't think they have an experience of economics coming from any other party other than themselves, their laptop, their garage band, their Instagram, whatever. Everybody, they are going to be the generation of like small cottage industries. Why on earth would I share my bounty with somebody else just because you've got a gun to my head? You know?
Yeah.
I just think conservatism has to... The prosperity that the individual is going to experience because they are, like I said, they can now pay themselves in Bitcoin, for instance. They don't need to actually centralize any of their economy anymore. I just can't see that marrying up with, okay, well, obviously we'll put this into a huge unaccountable central fund and you can all decide how to spend it and tell me how to live my life. I can't see those two things marrying up.
It's just going to be interesting for me because I think the left is sort of waking up to cryptocurrency and decentralized currencies like that. That might be a point where they try to take advantage of that. I know JP Morgan and a lot of these big banking systems are getting involved in cryptocurrency. So who knows where that's going to lead, or if it's just going to become part of our sort of normal system. And I don't know, but I do think a lot of people will wake up, and a lot of these younger leftists are going to wake up when they start working real jobs and they see how much money comes out of their paycheck towards taxes. And then they realize, oh, well, if I'm fighting for the left, I'm fighting for more of my money to be taken away from me. And that will wake up a lot of people. I think fiscally, conservatism is that's just a point that you reach with age and with experience.
Well, yeah, I think the old adage is I was a socialist until I got my first paycheck. I think it was PJ O'Rourke, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm going to give you your life back. I can't imagine anything more horrific for a 20-year-old than to be stuck talking to me in any capacity. It's like, oh God, when's this going to end?
This has been fantastic. No, it's been a great time.
I won't leave in you pretending that your camera had freeze framed for ages, hoping I'd leave. I'm not going to include that. I'm gonna that bit I've edited out because I think that just makes us both look terrible. But anyway, listen, Amala, Ekpunobi, thank you so much for talking to me today. Honestly, it just so uplifting and such a privilege, and I can only thank you for your work so far. And I'm assuming you're going to run for office. I didn't even ask you, but it's on the cards.
Maybe one of these days. Once I get some age on me, I might.
Thank you so much for your time and just good luck.
Thanks again for having me. It's been great.